Welcome to Shadow of Truth, and today is Thursday, March the 30th, 2017, and your hosts are Rory Hall from thedailycoin.org and Dave Kranzler from investmentresearchdynamics.com. What's happening, Dave?
Well, clearly not a lot, because the only kind of news we're getting out of Washington, D.C. is the kabuki theater going on about, the Russian interference and the healthcare. And it's like, let's talk about some real issues. So I'm looking for a truffle. I hope you got one for me today.
Well, we'll see.
Truffles are hard to find right now.
What's that?
Truffles are hard to find right now.
Yes, they are. And it's the Russians. They keep getting them all.
They're hacking our news.
They're hacking our news. Oh, well, let's jump in. Joke. I mean, the whole thing is a joke. I mean, that's what I was just thinking about. It just pisses me off to no end. The lies and propaganda and garbage that we have to put up with continually, while everything is falling apart. Listen to these guys, these cheerleaders, and it's nothing but rainbows and unicorns as far as the eye can see.
The reason that we have to put up with the crappy economic reporting and the manipulated numbers is because most of the public only sees the headline reports.
Exactly.
And they see the headline reports, in their favorite source of news, and that becomes a fact. Oh, well, my source of news wouldn't report this unless it was a fact. But I'll give you a good example. It was a pending home sales index that came out yesterday. It's an index of contracts that have been signed during February on existing homes, not new homes, and it's called the pending home sales index. And the idea is that contracts signed become housing closed sales a month or two later. So yesterday, the National Association of Realtors reports their pending home sales index for February, and they're saying it was up 5.5% versus January, and up 2.4% versus last year. Well, guess what? First of all, that's a seasonally adjusted annualized rate number. Okay, and to me, just in terms of reporting economic statistics, to take an estimate for a month, seasonally adjusted, we have no idea what those adjustments are, and then convert it into an annualized rate is just entirely misleading, because then you can come out and you can say, oh, home sales are 5.5% stronger versus January, and this doesn't get reported. It'll never get reported in the headlines, but all you got to do is pull up the report, which no one does except me. I'm the only idiot who does that. And they also show the not seasonally adjusted number. Okay, so it's like the number that they come up with for their index that doesn't have the seasonal adjustments, and it's just for the month. Well, guess what? It was down 2.4% February to February. And that's how you want to look at it, because you can say, okay, and they probably had slightly different data sample populations in February 2016 versus February 2017, but it's comparing apples to apples in terms of seasonality. It's February versus February. Okay, right. It was down 2.4%, and that's the unadjusted monthly number. Okay, and here's the other fact that doesn't come out. The number of contracts that actually are canceled has been rising significantly over the last year, especially with rates going higher, because once you sign a contract, then you got to go out and look for financing. And a lot of people with these higher rates don't qualify for a 3% down payment Fannie Mae mortgage based on the higher monthly payment and also higher prices for homes. So so it's like, but that headline becomes news. Oh, the housing market must be getting better. And if you drill down and analyze the numbers, it's actually, the truth is a lot different than what gets reported in the headline.
Well, that's what we're finding across the board, though, Dave. I mean, everything you know, I'd said more than once, if Obama were to come out, or if some prostitute media talking head were to come out and say it's bright sunshine outside, I would need to look out the window in order to confirm that it's not, in fact, pitch black midnight. Because,
well, I'd have to do the same thing if Trump made that claim also.
well, any of them. I mean, it
Right.
doesn't matter. I mean, they're all liars, and if you go 180 degrees from what's being reported and what's being said, you're a lot closer to the truth, if not spot on with the truth. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, that's what I was saying. I'm just so sick of the lies and the deceit and the propaganda, and it's just endless. And it doesn't matter what the story is. I mean, it really doesn't. If you're talking about the economics, wages, housing, retail, it really doesn't matter. It's all lies. All lies.
One of the biggest ones is the rate of inflation. Like the rate of inflation is really 2%.
No, it's 1.9.
Well, let's see. It's 1.9%, but that's the core rate. So that assumes that you don't go to the grocery store, you don't buy gasoline, and you don't go to the doctor.
Ever.
Oh, and you live in a cave.
Yeah, I wrote an article about that yesterday where I went over and pulled the charts from John Williams' Shadow Stats. And, if you look at the 1980 way that inflation was measured, we've been running north of 6% for about 2 years.
Yes.
And it's incredible. And it just ticked up to close to 10% just in the last month or so. I mean, that's just, it's incredible, the volume of inflation that we're dealing with versus the lie that we're told.
Well, here's the interesting thing. Paul Craig Roberts and John Williams and myself wrote an article about a year and a half ago, I think, maybe 2 years ago. I forget exactly how long. And Dr. Roberts wanted to look at what the GDP, the gross domestic product level, would be if we used a real inflation number, because they calculate the GDP by using a deflator to take out inflation, and it's based on the government's measurements of inflation. And so I think we used the year 2000 as the base year, if I recall correctly. And so let's just say the GDP level right now allegedly is running at around 18 trillion or something, around that.
Yep.
And we went back and recalculated the GDP from the year 2000 to 2014, I guess it was, and using the what you just pointed out, if you use the way the government measured inflation in 1980, the actual level of the GDP was about 9.5 trillion, rather than at the time it was around 17 trillion. So that shows you the effect of mismeasuring inflation.
That's incredible.
And they have to do that and every country does it, but not as badly as the U.S. does. Well, China probably does, but one of the reasons you have to do that is when you look at the level of Treasury debt outstanding, we're at 20 trillion now, and countries get analyzed based on the percentage of sovereign debt as a percentage of the GDP. Well, everyone made a big deal. Oh, well, our GDP is just now about 105% of GDP. I mean, our debt level, and that's just the treasuries. That doesn't include the Fannie and Freddie debt that the government now guarantees. But if you used, a bona fide GDP number, the U.S. would be running at more than a debt level, just the treasury debt level, at more than 200% of GDP. So that's one of the reasons why they monkey with how they measure inflation. It also allows them to keep Social Security increases every year a lot lower than it would be otherwise if the Social Security payments were based on the actual number or the actual level of inflation. the Social Security escalator.
Yeah, Social Security would be in much worse shape if it even existed at all. If they use the true inflation number to adjust the benefits that people received.
Oh yeah, that trust would be empty by now if they were using a real inflation number all these years.
Yes, something that got away from me, got away from you, got away from all of us. I just found late last night and published it this morning. And I titled it Step 1, Russia, China lay groundwork for BRICS transactions in gold. And in this article,
where did that come from?
I found it over at Gold Broker. In this article, I just want to read this real quick. It's about halfway into the article. Future plans to facilitate transactions between Moscow and Beijing in gold would certainly explain why the two countries are leading gold producers and buyers. Creating a BRICS, quote, gold market, end quote, would be an excellent way of bypassing the dollar while also using a currency that could be easily recycled for trade with other member nations. And while trading in gold won't happen overnight, BRICS states have already moved towards creating a, quote, new financial architecture, end quote, that tackles the dominance of the U.S. dollar in global finance, which we've reported on any number of times about the BRICS nations, the EEU, the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Eurasian Economic Union, the New Silk Road, all of these, as far as, and now that Russia has formally introduced their SWIFT alternative system, and China is, I'm sure that theirs is close to being formally deployed as well. Once they begin those transactions within the SWIFT, the alternative to the SWIFT system, they can put whatever currency they want in there, including gold. And as I've argued for a long time, China has not been acquiring all this gold to make more jewelry, to make more coins. That's not the reason for it. The reason for it is obviously to reintroduce some type of gold to the monetary system, whether it's strictly in China or at a global level. I mean, take your pick. But this is a really good article. Encourage everybody to read it. It spells it out what's going on. But I just find it very interesting that this whole idea has been overlooked. I mean, I think
it really has been. It's actually pretty big news.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've reported over at the Daily Coin, and then you and I have reported here on Shadow of Truth regarding the information that Koos Jansen uncovered a couple of years ago, or about a year ago, when I think it was Kazakhstan had formal talks with the Shanghai Gold Exchange about getting gold transactions along the Silk Road. I mean, that conversation, which has been largely ignored, that's already over a year old. That's over a year old information. And now this comes out, and it's like, when I saw it, it was just like, oh my goodness. I mean, we've been talking about it for a long time. This is coming, and now it's they're putting realistic infrastructure in place in order to facilitate gold as currency. Period. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, they're also putting the financial infrastructure in place, because this article is talking about how Russia's getting ready to issue its first yuan-denominated sovereign bond.
Well, that's probably that could be the MSDR bond. I'll have to look at that because China, as we reported a few months back, they were given the blessing. It was back in October. They were given the blessing from the IMF in order to issue the MSDR. And once that particular bond is issued, or whatever it is issued, it becomes the country of issuance is where it is tied to. It's not tied to
that's
the
what
IMF.
this is. The two countries agreed last May to issue home currency denominated bonds in each other's markets.
Yep.
A move that was widely viewed as intended to dethrone the dollar. Well, that's exactly what it does.
That's exactly what it does. Who's
wonder
sick of the
US
dollar?
I wonder the U.S. has upped its belligerence toward China
And Russia. I mean, it just they're and the thing is that they can up their belligerence and they can start dropping bombs. That doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the facts that this is happening. Even if we do go to war, even if the warmongers get their nuclear dream to come to fruition, on the other side of it, these systems will still be in place. Period.
You're assuming there's going to be something that exists on the other side of it.
Well, there has to be.
The road.
Well, if it's the road, then it won't matter.
Right.
The only thing that'll matter is how many chickens that you've got and how many vegetables that you have.
It won't even matter. Anyway, well, you got anything else?
No, I think that's big enough right there.
Yeah, that's big. That has been. I mean, even Zero Hedge missed that one.
Yeah, it's not. Me getting out there rooting around the way I do, it pays off on occasion.
Absolutely. It's like looking for truffles over in France, and you found one.
I guess that's as good a place as any to end it, Dave. What do you say?
I agree.
Well, all right. Well, you guys have a good weekend, and I guess we'll pick it up on Monday.
That sounds good. You have a good weekend, too.
You too.